It's about time we talk about Descendents all. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and I'm a big documentary film fan. You probably already know this if you've been listening or watching the Film Threat Podcast. And I love documentaries of all types. There are, people think like documentary, it's like, no, that's just another form of storytelling. It's not, documentary is not a genre. There are genres within documentaries, and the same holds true for animation. There are pop culture documentaries. There are documentaries centered around politics and social issues, documentaries about sports. I am a big fan of music documentaries, so I am excited to talk to filmmaker Matt Riggle today. Before we get to that, I want to let you know about our event, Film Threat's annual event, Award This. That is where we actually recognize documentaries of all types, like music documentaries. We have a music documentary category, a pop culture documentary category. It's award season and Oscars. All the oxygen kind of goes toward the Oscars, the Spirit Awards. There are so many smaller indie films that we cover all year round at Film Threat, and Award This is our opportunity to give recognition to those films. And I hope you'll join us in celebration of these movies.
In a world where every award show is a fucking Zoom call, comes Award This. From your pals at Film Threat comes a celebration of true independent films. Join us on April 10th at a socially distanced drive-in. In fact, I'll be there as your announcer, wearing a hazmat suit and inside a giant Bacta tank. And prepare for a virtual award show unlike any other ever in the history of mankind. Or awards kind. Award This 2021. It's happening, whether you like it or not. Drive-in live event on Saturday, April 10th. Virtual award show on Sunday, April 18th. Get tickets now at awardthis.com.
I hope you join us for that event. It's going to be a lot of fun, whether you come to the drive-in or you see what we filmed later on the 18th. And now let's talk to Matt Riggle. He is here to talk about his documentary, Filmage, the Story of Descendents All. Matt, welcome to the Film Threat Podcast.
Hey, Chris. Matt, thanks for having me. Appreciate being on.
Well, I first of all, I mentioned earlier, a big fan of music docs. I always feel like I learned something either about my favorite bands or bands I may have never known the history of. And what I love about this documentary doesn't necessarily go for, when you would see some of these documentaries, and I hesitate to even call them that, but the sort of like those exposés where they would go behind the scenes. This is more than that. This is really about a band that not a lot of people would necessarily know about. They have a big fandom, but they're not, in the top tier necessarily. But they have a history going back to like the 70s. It's insane the amount of history behind Descendents, which then evolved into All. How did you become a fan? You can't work on a documentary that spans decades that gets into the personal lives of all the band members without being a fan. How did you become a fan? And then how did you gain the trust of everyone involved to be able to make this documentary?
Man, so yeah, it was all, I was a fan. I was like, whenever I guess I was probably 12, 13, 14, around in that area, I started getting into punk rock. My older brother was really tapped into that. And he, one day we had discovered some bands. I'm trying to remember who, maybe we were the first couple, but he came home with this cassette tape, and it wasn't like a copy. We usually had like little copies of cassettes, but it was like a real tape, and it had the weirdest cover. It just said All, and it had a big black dot on it. It said the word dot on it. And it's like, what is this? So we put it in, and it's this amazing band All, and so that's how I came into it. This was in like 92, 93 ish. And, it was 3 songs. And so, we didn't have the internet to go search things. So we went to the record store and started tracing back their records and found out before that they were Descendents. And so got into them and then started moving forward with them from the albums that they subsequently released. And, just as a huge fan of them. And so getting into how we did the movie, so my co-director, Deedle, who, by the way, is sheltering in place for not just COVID, but for the snowstorm in Texas. So that's why he can't be on right now. But anyway, he and I played in a band, and we had Stefan, the guitar player for Descendents and all. We had him. We went and recorded at his studio, and kind of got to know him. And basically this was like in 2005, and we started talking to him even then, because Deedle and I were both video editors. He works in commercials, and I was working at the time in news and documentary stuff. And we even asked him back then, like, why is there no movie about you guys? You guys have this amazing story. There's a bunch of band members in the beginning, and then they change their name. They always have a rotation of singers. They're just a very unique story. All of them write the songs. It's not just like a singer-songwriter with his band. It's like this very unique kind of situation. And, it was even back then that we were like, why isn't there a movie? And so we started talking about it. And it was about 5 years later that we were like, oh, let's do it. Let's make that movie,
Well, before I even saw you with the guitar strategically placed in the background.
Yeah. Does that look unnatural? I was
No. It looks perfectly natural. But before I even met you online to talk to you about this film, I had a suspicion. I said, the person who made this is a musician, because there's an inside baseball that your documentary gets into that I haven't really observed in other documentaries. The inside baseball being about the insides of the business, insides of the like drama surrounding not just the band, but the fans' reaction to the band. It really felt like the filmmakers, like yourself and Deedle, like had to be musicians themselves to have a really deep understanding of what bands go through. And I'm trying to think of like bands that evolved. I think of like, Joy Division and New Order sort of evolved from one band to another band. Descendents, all kind of a similar thing. So there are very few bands that have had this kind of like long history, but also history where there's a sort of change in the band. And then you have people that are fans of, I'm a fan of Descendents and not a fan of all. And
the division,
you get the sort of insider, like, people complaining, I like their earlier stuff. I mean, that's sort of that's a cliche at this point. But was it your understanding of actually being a musician that, you're a musician who's also a documentary filmmaker? Did that help in this process in terms of being able to, gain the trust of the band? But also, there are some incredibly personal moments. I don't want to give too much away, but having to do with a health crisis of one of the band members. Like, can you get into that and how you got so much intimate footage and photography dating back like decades? It really is like an epic documentary that I can't believe you crushed into, less than an hour and a half.
Right. Yeah, no. So the first part of what you're saying, the musician thing is huge. That's, we made a movie about our favorite band. This was Deedle and I, this is a shared band that we've both loved. There's some overlap, but that's the one band that we was like, we just die for them kind of a band, and then as we got to know them, because that's the thing about them, they're terrible at promoting themselves over the years. All they did was work. They were on tour 9 months a year. They'd record an album, they'd go on tour, and they'd repeat. There's only like a couple of years in the 80s and 90s where they didn't release a record. Like, they have that many records, So anyway, that's why there's so much footage, and they have such a storied history. But all they did, they had their head down and they worked, and they're just such an inspiration to musicians, people who genuinely just care about the music and writing songs and the lyrics that they write. And, they've been walking that walk for all these decades still to this day. That's all they do, And so, definitely it was like, we were making a movie about our heroes in a sense. But with also not wanting to just do this kind of sugar coated thing of, we just wanted to tell their story, because we didn't really know it. We were discovering it as we went along, because there wasn't a whole lot of information, even online. There was a couple of tellings of the same 3 or 4 stories over and over. And so as you see in the movie, I think the most apparent thing to me is like all these dudes. I always kind of would jokingly say they're all weirdos, but they're all just very quirky, individuals who have very distinct personalities and who are all, I mean, they're all super talented. Like I say, they all write the songs. Every one of them, you know, is pulling their weight that way. They all are masters of their instruments, and the vocalists are, you know, top notch. And so yeah, you know, it was like a true passion project. You know, we were editors and somewhat filmmakers in a sense. We worked on stuff outside of, but this was our first project that we were actually, you know, birthing from start to finish, and that we cared deeply about. And you know, but definitely we were musicians way before that. And
it shows in the doc. I mean, it really shows in the doc that kind of like the kinds of things you wouldn't learn about a band, like you know, you wouldn't learn about a band from a traditional documentary, from a fan from the outside. I mean, I think it helps to be a fan, but I think being a musician really gave me perspective, seeing it through your eyes. You know, like just the kind of inside things that people may not have even thought to bring up. Well, the other thing that I thought was really striking was that how admired they are as music. I mean, these are guys that like they're there to play. They're there for the passion of the music and for playing for a crowd. And to see people like Dave Grohl like be in admiration of them. I'm curious about the people, like the other musicians that you interviewed that are fans of Descendents and all.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people say they're a band's band in a sense, you know, kind of that, you know, somebody's a comics comic or something, you know, they're a definite band's band, because musicians know how hard these guys work to continually be as consistent as they've been over the years, and just, you know, to just be as great as they've been. But yeah, people like Dave Grohl, you know, Blink-182, like, you know, these are guys on record who would proudly said, you know, this is how I learned to play. Like, these guys, you know, taught me to get into this, you know, and so they have such an effect on, you know, their fans, whether it be somebody like me or anybody, just regular fans going to shows, or if it's somebody like Dave Grohl, you know, everybody's just inspired by these guys, you know. It's, you know, I always would say, like, Descendants they may not have the most fans, as any, you know, more fans than any band, but the like, for instance, the ratio of Descendants tattoos to fans versus other bands, you know, what I'm trying to say is their fans love them, you know, they get tattoos of them. They, you know, have their lyrics hanging on their walls and stuff, you know, they have a huge effect on their fans, and including, you know, a lot of musicians who've gone on to do big things, you know.
And what I thought was interesting also is you get into the process of how they come up with their music. Like, just like, here it is in my head, I wrote it down, boom. I mean, you must have really appreciated that, being a musician yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's always fascinating to me, how people write songs, you know, and everybody kind of does it. There's a couple of different ways, it seems like, as I've talked to other musicians and stuff. But Bill Stevenson, who's kind of, you know, he's the drummer of the band, but he's also like the leader of the band, and you know, he's the only original member at this point, I guess, unless you include Milo, but Milo wasn't in all. So anyway, Bill's like the guy. It's his band, and in so many ways, and he's also one of the biggest, one of the main songwriters. And yeah, the way he writes songs is very unique. I mean, there's not a whole, even the other guys in the band kind of like, yeah, Bill, he like dreams his songs, you know. He's like, he's in his own world doing that stuff. But, you know, it's not to say he just dreams them and doesn't work on them, but he does. He like would wake up with a complete chorus in his head and go, okay, I got to write a song around this chorus now, you know. And yeah, getting into the nitty gritty on how this stuff, you know, how it's all made is like, that was the whole, that was what we wanted to do with the movie. That I wanted it to be almost all about that. And then it became, well, we got to tell their story. And then, oh man, their story's really fascinating. Okay, let's do the story movie, you know, but let's put a little of that in, you know.
But it's definitely an untold story that, whether you're a fan of the band or, you know, I feel like I was aware of them because I love 90s indie rock, like, but I didn't know the sort of epic nature of this story. So whether you're a fan of this band or not, this music documentary is just one that you have to see. It's my understanding is it's out now. It'll be on all platforms on video on demand, or you can go to Strikeback Studios.
Yeah, Strikeback.
Studios.
Yeah, because the other thing, the movies came out several years back now, and it was kind of floating homeless for a little while, and so we're like so happy to be with Strikeback. And strikebackstudios.com, I believe is they'll have everything by March. It'll be back up everywhere, and hoping to I mean, the story continues. These guys haven't quit. There's even a song that Milo wrote. It's called "I Quit." And it's him kind of making fun of the fact that and there's a line in the song, what am I going to be playing the Pixie at 50 or 60? And he's like, right. I quit. And it's like, no, Milo, it turns out you are. Like, those guys are almost 60 now, so, and they'll be back once we can all go places and exist in the world again. I guarantee they'll be back at it.
Well, I hope that just seeing concerts in person will be back. I mean, I have a friend who works at the Hollywood Bowl, and said that they may be back as early as July.
Is that right?
2021. They're looking at, and think about the Hollywood Bowl. I'm sure you're familiar with that venue.
Oh, yeah.
Outdoor venue. It's huge in the heart of Hollywood. And think about it. I mean, God, you could have 10,000 people there, socially distance them.
That's
and
true.
You're in an outdoor venue during the summer. And by then, I think vaccinations will have rolled out more, for the mass public. So
as long as nobody wants to have a beer or take a leak, it would be great.
Yeah, well, exactly. We'll see. But I really miss going to see concerts, and I hope it comes. It's optimistic, but if the Hollywood Bowl is coming back in July, I'm gonna be there. I'll be there wearing a mask. And I'm with Purell in my pocket, but
I might make the drive if they open. Yeah,
dude, look, I've driven to Vegas to go see a movie. I went to Vegas to go see Tenet when it came out to see it in IMAX. That's how much I miss movie theaters. Although the drive-in is, I've always loved drive-ins. So drive-ins becoming a thing has been like a great. But I'm just looking forward to when we can all be together again and celebrate. Music and film and my passions. So
can I put in one tiny little plug?
Please.
There's another film in the works right now that is actually branches off of this one. So one of the All singers, Scott Reynolds, I shot a bunch of stuff with him during COVID, actually. Socially distanced, masked, all this stuff. And we shot he did like a solo concert by himself, no audience, live thing. And I shot it with a bunch of cameras and I edited that. So it's going to be like a concert film and with a lot of documentary stuff in between. And that guy's like a true character. So
when is that coming out?
It's that I don't know. I'm editing it right now. So, but it's getting really close to being a thing.
All right.
So,
well, hit me up when it comes out. Send
Definitely.
It to me. I love a good music doc. And Matt, thank you for being on the Film Threat podcast. It was real
Thanks,
fun.
man. Appreciate you having me.